Welcome to the podcast Idee Cooperative. In this episode, we will hear the fourth and final lecture from the Cooperative Congress in Switzerland, which took place on October 17th at the Kursaal in Bern. Since this lecture was delivered in English, I will also address you in English today. This episode is a lecture of Anu Puusa. She's a professor of management at the University of Eastern Finland and conducts extensive research on cooperatives. Her expertise in organizational identity and change makes her a highly sought-after speaker. Her lecture was titled Unlocking Potential, Confronting and Conquering Cooperative Challenges. We hope you enjoy listening.
Good afternoon, dear friends. It is such a privilege to be here with you. I come from Finland, and when we Finns, when we travel, what we tell to foreigners about our country is that we have geographically big country that has a pure nature. We have 10,000 lakes, and we also say that the real Santa Claus does not come from US. It's not the one with the Coca-Cola ad. The real Santa Claus comes from Finland. But what we really should be bragging about is that we are, in relative terms, the most cooperative country in the world. So I think that is what you should all know about Finland. I'm a business professor and I work at the University of Eastern Finland. It's located there. And researching cooperatives and talking about them are some of my favorite things in my job. And research, it is one thing, it increases understanding of the whole phenomenon, and of course it creates the basis for teaching. But namely, talking about this movement is what motivates me the most. And one of the most important reasons is that when I'm talking about cooperatives, I'm talking about something that I myself very much believe in. And also I'm talking about something that really has a genuine story to tell. And it's such a pleasure to see so many of you here. Because despite where we all come from and what we do and what our demographics are, I think we all have something in common. We know and we appreciate and we are involved in this cooperative movement in different roles, and that's fantastic. And then again, it's almost inevitable considering the magnitude of the movement. It is really an invisible giant. It occurs in almost over 100 countries and it occurs in all continents. And as you know, they operate in almost all sectors and can be set up by producers, consumers, residents, or employees. It is such a fantastic model. And as you know, cooperatives affect more than half of humanity. It's really amazing. And therefore, we really have a reason to pat each other on the back and congratulate each other for being part of something so magnificent. However, maybe it's the little critical, nasty researcher living inside of me speaking, but while we recognize cooperatives' good deeds and huge potential, at least to me, it's very important not to have only these rose-colored glasses on when viewing the movement. In fact, I think that in the long run, we might even end up hurting this movement if we never review it or discuss about it critically, identifying and acknowledging all of its weaknesses and challenges, because that is the only way we can learn and move forward. And then again, I also believe that everything genuinely good also stands up to critical scrutiny. So we shouldn't be scared of these confrontations or critical remarks. Therefore, I've chosen to highlight today some of the critical issues, even dangers, that might prevent us from using all the potential this movement has to offer. But no worries, I will not be all negative Nancy, so to speak. I will also talk about how to confront and conquer these identified challenges. I've chosen to address my topic from 4 different viewpoints. Firstly, I will talk about what is my absolute favorite topic, and that is the dual nature, its meaning and manifestation. What does it mean in practice? And secondly, I will address challenges related to member passiveness and then some issues related to cooperative governance. And finally, I will discuss what, in my opinion, is the root cause for all the other challenges mentioned, the poor awareness and education of the cooperative idea. Let me start by saying that it is evident that the capitalist entrepreneurial culture has taken root in Western societies at least in two ways. Firstly, the limited company is the dominant form of enterprise, and also our people's general perception of ownership is dominated by the principles of private ownership. We believe in collective ownership, but this is the dominant form. And this doctrine was popularized by Milton Friedman in the 1970s, and it is very much alive and still very well adopted. And that, in large part, explains why cooperatives' very different mission and purpose and ownership model and their special view on governance and profit distribution are not always very well understood. The dual nature is what makes cooperatives so unique and distinct from other businesses. I think they are at the core of cooperative idea. So let me elaborate a bit on this. As you know, a cooperative is a business enterprise and a social group of members, and as such has both a business and member community related aims. So it really combines two distinct but not conflicting dimensions. They are, or at least they should be, complementary roles to one another. The economic dimension, the business role, what it means in practice, it means that cooperatives, like any other business, they need to have a viable idea. They need to strive to maintain their competitive advantage. And of course, they operate within the markets, accepting the market logic like any other business as well. However, it is simultaneously, and now I'm highlighting foremost, a jointly owned community that is democratically governed by its members and whose operations are first and foremost based on their members' needs and well-being. And again, I'm saying, or at least should be. Cooperatives' aim is not to maximize the return on investment, but to optimize the economic returns to both their members and their own operations. What they maximize is the member benefit. And as human beings, there are other issues than just economic ones that are important for us. So while fiercely aiming at efficiency and profitability, cooperatives need to make a distinction between profit making and profit maximization, and there is a significant difference. In practice, this means that cooperatives do prioritize people over profit. Their purpose, as you know, is to provide benefits, both economic and social, to their members while simultaneously ensuring their capability to generate a sufficient amount of profit in order to be able to maintain and develop operations, ensure solvency and thus independence, and also the cooperative's long-term survival. My own studies have shown that young people perceive cooperative movement and particularly its values as very attractive, appealing, and relatable. I think it's for most human beings, we find those values very appealing. At the same time, however, they seem to think that the spirit of the times, particularly in business life, emphasizes the business role, relentless competition, and profit maximization aims. And according to our studies, the young largely associate business in general with very hard values, such as greediness, selfishness, short-sightedness, and lack of solidarity. And therefore, we all face a very serious challenge. It can be very, very difficult for people today, especially the young, to understand the ultimate cooperative idea that, if we want to simplify it, means having a double mission, doing good business and doing good at the same time. And I don't have to convince you that that really makes an excellent match and can work beautifully. But people do have doubts. They wonder if all this is just too good to be true, and can this really work in practice? Therefore, it is crucial to improve our communication. We need to be much better. We need to do much better job in convincing the young, the general public, and sometimes even our very own members, our employees, representatives in different governance bodies, or even our management about it. Because if we fail to do so, if we don't, ideology and good intentions aside, we will not be able to provide people with a true distinctive alternative. We will not be able to attract those young people to become part of this wonderful movement. And we will fail in creating a genuine emotional bond with our members, and most of all, our cooperative managers are unable or sometimes even unwilling to manage this model in a way that it would use its full potential and its unique features. And thus, the cooperative difference cannot be a genuine source of competitive advantage. And that's not what we want. Instead, and this is a reality already in too many cooperatives, they are managed large parts like any other business. Next, I want to say a few words about challenges related to the membership. And while, of course, I do understand that there are an endless amounts of differences between individual cooperatives, as a rule of thumb, still, these challenges are faced particularly by large cooperatives in consumer and service sector, even more so than in, for example, in producer cooperatives. First of all, we have to remember that the basic idea of the cooperative model includes the assumption of active membership. The members, as we all know, they finance, they govern, and they use the cooperative services. However, while cooperatives today can attract their members to actively use their services, the members may still identify themselves as only customers. And if they lack the initiative to keep up with their cooperative's affairs and participate in its decisions, a very significant portion of the model's opportunities are lost on them. And therefore, the indifferent, even negligent attitude of cooperative members towards the power of influence granted by the ownership must be seen as a clear concern or even a big risk. Only members who recognize their ownership are able to wield the power of an owner. This is so important. Only members who recognize their ownership are able to wield the power of an owner. And the less members are aware of this, of their ownership, the weaker is their willingness to participate in governance too, or even to monitor it. And the low participation in cooperative meetings and low voter turnout in representative elections reflect the shallow interest of members in the governance of the cooperatives they own. However, the ones that are inside, the ones are there, the governing representatives, they should not take this as a license to play fast and loose with the principles of good governance. If anything, the opposite. If the owners abandon their monitoring role, the governing representatives are there to make up for it. the governing representatives, they must remain alert even without being pressured by the rest of the members. Also, very interesting and very important point, we love to talk about democracy when we talk about cooperatives. But we have to keep in mind that democracy as a cooperative value, it refers to much more than only members' right to vote. It is best realized when we have thoroughly internalized the cooperative values of equality and alongside with members' right to vote, acknowledge the importance of their voice. I strongly encourage each and every cooperative to foster a genuine and active member dialogue to give room for the members' voice to be heard. I know it's challenging, especially in big cooperatives, but it's not possible. It's not impossible, and we have digital tools to help. We just need to change the attitude. Next, I want to say a few more words about cooperative governance. And as stated earlier, regrettable as it is to generalize, the loose commitment and passive nature of cooperative members as owners is very important to recognize as a starting point when evaluating the need to develop good cooperative governance. I have prepared a few questions for you, and let's see. I ask you, is the expertise and understanding of, namely the nature of cooperative business, a high priority criterion when you are selecting new governing representatives in your cooperative? It really should be. I mean, business and commercial competence, of course, is relevant, but should not be emphasized at the expense of the cooperative competence and the vice versa, of course. The governing representatives must have a good understanding of the cooperative idea to guarantee that the future cooperatives can operate according to the true principles, and this aspect cannot be compromised. I have a few more questions for you there. My question is, and you can think about it, can your board realize the cooperative's basic mission in its work with a sufficient level of clarity? Is it clear to everyone? And purity? Do they act according to the International Cooperatives Identity Statement, the values and principles? Do the board members understand the idea of cooperative business in the first place? Can they conceptualize the duality? And can they put it in words? And can they put it in practice? And if so, is there a balance between the business role and member community role? And this is a very critical question. Do you measure it? And if you measure it, do you communicate the results to your members? I mean, we see how well we are doing financially, but do you communicate and do you measure the aspects that measure how well you have succeeded providing your members with other type of value related to the member community role? I hope you were able to check all the boxes with honors. But if not, if the board does not produce the above in the form of strong guidelines and messaging, these aspects may become disconnected phenomenon and fail to secure a foothold and influence among operational management and the rest of the cooperative's personnel, and thus they are really critical issues of cooperative governance. Before we move on, I will give you one example of what is happening. In one of our studies, we discovered that the elected representatives emphasize the business activities and their profitability while pretty much ignoring the aspects related to the member community role. These two roles were not seen as complementary, but very separate, with the business role taking priority, meaning that the member community role was only realized once the business role or business was profitable enough. And this is very harsh to say, but it became evident that the member community role was in those cases not understood at all. Its interpretation was reduced to isolated good deeds that these cooperatives performed as they saw fit. So if we interpret the member community role only as a random act of sponsoring or doing some charity work, we are pretty much lost. While there are a lot of important critical issues and aspects to explore from governance point of view, the final one at this point, I will ask who truly views the power in our jointly owned cooperatives. In some cases, and this is fortunately not even very rare, the managing director's role can be very powerful in a cooperative, resulting in cooperatives that are clearly management-driven, not member-driven. Some scholars have argued that the cooperative managers enjoy positions of far greater power and much wider margins of discretion unfeathered by the membership compared to managers in capitalistic companies. However, the ultimate idea of the cooperative is that the members should be actively involved in the decision-making and play a key role in direction the company, making sure that the operations and business areas serve the needs of the membership. In case a genuine dialogue is missing between the management members, different members of the governance bodies and the membership, and if the competence of representatives of different bodies falls short, it really sets the stage for unresisted dominance of the CEO. And because in many cases the balance of power is heavily skewed in favor of the managing director, they must be highly committed people. They must be committed to their work and they have to be prepared to hold themselves to a high standard. They must put themselves at stake and maintain very high morals and ethics. The importance of strong cooperative values as a foundation cannot be overstated in this instance, and the governing representatives should consider the values of the nominees when choosing the key persons. So really the recruiting phase is very, very important. My final, last critical point that I wish to address relates to cooperative awareness and education. And as I said at the beginning, this theme is the biggest root cause for all the other challenges I have mentioned. As a member of the academia, as mentioned, with great concern, I have noted that among the students, the investor-owned logic, its purpose and practices dominate both the perceptions and expectations. So to simplify it, especially in business school, we still tend to teach our young that mainly and sometimes the sole purpose of a firm is to maximize the profits to shareholders. And also, it takes relentless competition and competitive relationships and profit maximization as natural and somehow inevitable starting points instead of cooperation and solidarity, like what we believe in this movement. And we just heard from the previous presenter that actually which is more effective. But still, this is what we teach our young. So currently, the cooperative model is very much overshadowed by business forms that are capitalist-centric, and features that make cooperative identity unique are not recognized. And also, the cooperative ideology, alongside with the cooperative form of business with its unique dual role, these values and principles, they have been relatively little research, particularly in the field of business studies, and therefore the theoretical framework based on the unique features, it is practically missing altogether. It's also a reality that in large part, the cooperatives have been studied in the light of theories that have been developed in the context of investor-owned companies and more broadly within their worldview. Cooperative movement itself has failed to establish a solid, comprehensive theoretical base, even in its very central aspects. The cooperative theory base is missing, or it is just currently being built. And we are talking about a movement that is almost 200 years. It's horrible. The model is recognized mainly as an oddity of economics and economics theory, kind of an enfant terrible, pardon my French, who refuses to settle into the dominant division, into a business form whose only purpose is to maximize profits, or into this non-profit sector, which includes charity work with no commercial or profit aims. Cooperatives fall into neither one of these two categories. They have their own way. They combine the best from both of these extremes. There's little literature available on the subject, and the number of researchers is ridiculously low considering the magnitude of the movement. In Finland, also teaching the cooperative topics at all education levels is pretty much missing. And I have a strong hunch that the situation is no better in other places either. And therefore, the overall level of knowledge regarding the cooperative idea is low. You might now think, when was the first time you heard about this movement? Was it taught in schools when you were in the elementary school? What did you hear about cooperatives, or at the university? I personally pretty much heard absolutely nothing, and this is very, very, very bad. We are also guilty of talking about cooperatives in very traditional terms, using language, channels, and ideas that don't always resonate with younger generations who are looking for change, not more of the same. But cooperatives, they are not some relic of the past. They are really a powerful tool for the future, and therefore it is really time to rethink the narrative, the way we talk about this movement. And I genuinely believe that all begins with knowledge. I really speak from experience, because when I've been teaching my students about cooperatives, every time I run into the fact that majority of students don't really know anything about the movement, and some of them might have even fairly negative attitudes because of the preconceived ideas they might have. However, when the course continues, when they get more information, their interest is always piqued, but also their annoyance grows. They really demand to know why they have not heard of this model earlier. And students, they can even get angry because once they understand how cooperatives work, they feel like a secret solution has been kept hidden from them. I mean, who wouldn't want fair business dealings where security and long-term nature enable the continuity of activity, and where the success is based on not just competition, but people's joint efforts, and where the results can benefit individuals both economically and socially, and where activity also benefits regions and communities on a larger scale, and where cooperation acts as a positive driving force for change, both locally and globally. It is really pure gold. However, we have to keep in mind that people cannot commit to something they don't know or understand. And this is why we need to take the fifth principle seriously. You are all familiar with the International Cooperative Alliance's 7 principles. This is the 5th one, and so far we are getting failing report cards. We are not doing enough in this respect. In my opinion, we need to be able to convince our teachers and educate them about the cooperative ideas, not just about the cooperative form of business. And that way we could enable the incorporation of the theme in upper high school curricula, because the young, they deserve to know and identify with the cooperative values and principles and understand these unique features and the difference they have made and can make in the future. Because the young, they are the current and future cooperators, consumers, producers, business practitioners, opinion leaders, educators, academics, government officials, and administrators. And we, as a movement, we need them. We need their energy. We need their fresh ideas. But also, the young need this movement, considering the stage of the world where we live in today. It is rather peculiar to me that cooperatives have not addressed these issues together as a global movement. We are all trying to tackle these challenges, but why don't we live as we teach? Why don't we cooperate? Why don't we join forces in promoting cooperative ideas? We should identify and support cooperative researchers and educators. We should bring them together. We should benchmark and share information and good practices much more than we do currently. We should and we could do so much more in the spirit of Principle 6 that says that cooperatives serve their members most effectively and strengthen the movement by working together through local, national, regional and international structures. This is very true. And don't even get me started how much more we could do if we join forces as a global movement in terms of the use of natural resources, sustainability and many, many other big themes. We should lobby our politicians separately and together and tell them that we have a viable, competitive model that has proven itself for almost 200 years. A system of running a business that puts people at the center, that anchors wealth in communities and sets a generational strategy and is competitive in the markets. I want to end my speech by reminding all of us that cooperatives do provide us with a viable, tested answer to the eternal question of how to balance profits and purpose. It is an answer we need, our world needs in this modern age where the idea of stakeholder capitalism dominates and we face so many simultaneous and serious crises. However, as long as we fail to collectively address these critical issues, we continue to legitimize the idea that the cooperatives have no special or distinguishing characteristics that would set them apart from other models. If we want this, we need to be an active part of the solution. This includes me, and this includes all of you. Cooperatives allow us to play that part. It gives each and every one of us a voice, and we just need to use it. Thank you so much.
That was the 21st episode of Ihre Cooperative, featuring Anu Puusa's lecture, the final one from the Cooperative Congress in Switzerland. In the upcoming episodes, we will dive into the main topic of the Cooperative Congress, the future viability of cooperatives. For more information about Ihre Cooperative, the Competence Center for Cooperatives, visit idecooperative.ch.